This is basically an offensive line that is developing players, is standalone in their uniqueness in the Big 12, and kind of just has some tanks that other teams just don't have right now.
No, and like I think there's a lot of carryover and good talent that was left over from last year, but I feel like they've all gotten better.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Welcome to the Booth Review. I'm your host, Brandon McAnderson, and I am being joined by the original host of the Booth Review, Kent Swanson, back for another round on the Booth Review, and we are so glad to have him because he knows NFL, he knows KU, he knows quarterbacking, the star from Mid-America Nazarene, in the sky, Kent Swanson. What's up, dude?
B-Mac, we're gonna have to work on that intro next time. They're way too nice, but man, I you know how much I love doing this show with you. You know how excited I am to be talking KU football with you. So I'm excited to get into it, man.
Yeah, so we had 6 million people get to know what we've been talking about for the past few weeks, that this is a very good football team. S&P rankings have them as 26th in the nation. Not something you usually see from a 5-6 team, but they have basically validated everything that we thought about them. It just didn't happen as quickly, and it's been a joy to watch these past few weeks. And I'm going to hit you with a big picture concept about this growth with the offense and what they built in infrastructure. So we know this is a great team. Joe Klatt posted the stat that if you remove the last 2 minutes, Kansas will be 9-2. He posted the scores. It hurt. I don't want to see it or talk about it anymore, but it's a reality of this football season. And what I can't help but think about is how badly it started, how much of the brunt of that was placed at Grimes' feet. And it was a tough time to deal with. However, what resulted from that tough time was the best version of what Kansas is known for and what Coach Grimes is known for. Coach Grimes is known for developing offensive line and teaching really good run principles. So now Kansas offense has really good run principles and structure with the creativity from Coach Z that you've known them for, and it is a match made in heaven. So I'm saying, was it worth it, the struggle to the season, for what could be a nice 4 or 5 year run with Grimes and this offensive core, trading those tough games where they had to figure it out and muddle through it versus what this thing can now become as we move forward?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little bit tough to it's so that start to the season was so rough. I think it is probably worth it though, just because, I mean, it does feel like that KU has found, some synergy here. They've found some consistency on the offensive side of the football, and that is going to be invaluable for the next wave. And Lance Leipold and hopefully Lance Leipold and this coaching staff, who, Lance is not one to have a ton of turnover. Guys stay. Sometimes there's some opportunities for advancement, but he picks good coaches. He finds good coaches. And he's stuck with Grimes throughout the entirety of those struggles, and he's been rewarded. And I think this could be long-term success for this team as they've started to mesh and figure some things out and find a rhythm to this thing. And man, we talked about this the last time I was on the show, BMAC. Like, you saw signs of this offense really taking big steps. They've continued to take big steps, and I'm blown away by how good they've looked offensively. That was a good Colorado defense that they beat, and they ran it down their throats. And Devin Neal was incredible. And don't get me wrong, Devin deserves a ton of credit, but that offensive line, I am blown away by how good this group has gotten week over week. Credit to Coach Ekpalsa for that too, and Grimes. They're developing that offensive line, and that offensive line has been playing out of their mind. And it's just so much. There's so much good things happening with this offense. I do think it's set up for success, and I know it was frustrating at the start. And part of it, I think, play calling, but also Jalen had his struggles as he was working way back from some things, too. Which, some of those 2-minute situations and some of those, situational footballs look a little rusty, but man, they're on the way back, man. And it's been so much fun to watch. And I do hope that this is a long-term sustainable group. that continues to get to work together, because you've got to be really pleased with what they've done to this point.
Yeah, the offensive line play, when you mentioned it, it was wonderful, man. It was a lot of throwing people out of the club type of situations. And what I like about Kansas, especially in these last three matchups against basically the top three defenses in the league, throw K-State in there, it's the top four defenses in the league, all odd fronts, all have tricky ways to occupy the 6 run gaps. All the way that you counteract that is strong offensive line play, because it doesn't matter where you are if your guys are smart, and then when they latch onto you, they finish you, and that's what these guys do. So it is really a credit to how they developed, and why I've liked the matchup so much is because these teams are playing odd fronts and making it hard for people, making it hard on first and second down.
Well, and the thing that I got so excited was, like, if you think about how this team has dealt with like a 3-down look against Iowa State, like they've had struggles running the football against Iowa State in the past. And what has their counterpunch been? Like, let's just throw it over the top. Let's throw it deep. Jason Bean lighting them up a few years ago.
Right.
They have made marked improvements running the football against odd fronts this year. Yeah, if you look at what they did versus last year, like they had their struggles. Like that was one of the things in the last couple of years. Honestly, that's something that had given them some problems at times. But you're right, BMAC. Like it's lining up and winning up front has been a huge factor in that. And like that's like it's a testament to this group that they were able to do it. And it's not just the back; it's that offensive line, it's play calling and the development too.
Yeah, I mean, look at Houston. Look at how Houston has played every other team in the Big 12. It has been like pulling teeth to move the football on them, because their defensive line is really good and their front seven is really good. And Kansas did not have a problem with them. So you're seeing that some of their offensive line play and some of that structural stuff we talked about, like what you talk about with Grimes. And like, to me, that's evidence of this was the right choice, because they became a team that structurally was a good run team statistically, but they did struggle in structure and they used a lot of misdirection. And this is not what they're doing now. Misdirection is now a treat. And as we're talking about misdirection, it would be a mistake not to mention the beauty of the power read tight end leak back to Trevor Cartel. I mean, you want to talk about a X&O 5-course meal. I mean, that was it. We're talking about was this the Cardell hurdle or no? But that was no, that was a third down. It wasn't a hurdle. So essentially the late shift with JD and Devin, for Devin to take a direct snap, fakes the ball to JD. JD runs that power read to the left, peels back those tight end leak to Cardell. It was not the play he hurdled. It might have been the play though that he trucked Shiloh. Big time. Right. I think that was a play where he had the big time finish against Shiloh. But was that not a thing of beauty? Was that not, between those two examples of what we talked about? We talked about run structure and how much they are so much better against 3-man fronts and elite against the top defenses in the Big 12 from a run structure standpoint. And now you have the creativity of the misdirection tight end league. Just talk about how those two things complemented each other.
Well, first off, and like I think, Andy Kotelnicki used to make those comments about how, like, his play calling is like it's a blizzard, it's ice cream with your favorite candy or something like that. And I think what KU found a way to do was take a concept that's very popular, that's very successful, and they put a little wrinkle on it that disguised it, right? And this wasn't the first time in the game that they had gone, I believe, to the direct snap to the shift and the direct snap to...
Yeah, been a couple weeks of that stuff with the Devin shift over.
And even in that game, I think that wasn't the first time that Colorado had seen it either. So that was, I think they kind of set that up beautifully. They, kind of basically put a different flavor onto a concept that's been very successful over the last few years, both in college and the NFL. And it was an absolute thing of beauty to see, that they are doing all these things in the run game, and there's a rhythm to how this team is calling plays, and there's enough creativity to how this team is calling plays, layering in all the things that they're doing with the run game, and then just finding and picking their spots to have great. I think the timing on the play calling has been exceptional too, right? So everything's just working right now for Kansas offensively, And that was a beautiful little wrinkle. That was I think I saw someone on Twitter, they'd never seen that, leak get called or leak get designed, with that, with that window dressing and stuff like that. So like continuing to evolve, continuing to find ways to bring plays, a different life on top of everything we've talked about, man, you got to feel really good about where they're going.
My goodness, like how hard is that as a linebacker, to want to respond to the play fake, then want to get into your drops, and then have a tight end run underneath you as you're dropping? I mean, it is a nightmare. Not only that, my favorite concept related to it is that the edge guy is the guy that Cardell is blocking through before he releases. Once he does release, they pull the backside guard for him. So I mean, it's just if there's 2 layers protection from an edge rush, it's a safe, creative play, and it was just beautiful to watch and beautiful to see. And that's what I mean about like, this was the intended purpose of the hire, and we would be remiss not to talk about his struggles and not talk about his growth and what could be with this offense and what they have planned moving forward, because now we could feel and see the ways in which creativity has affected the playbook over the weeks. You've seen, they ran a jet with Devin out of a junk formation. They ran a screen 3 weeks ago to Devin out of a junk formation with linemen split out. I still think this is the most fun place to play offensive line in the country. And now it speaks for itself. You got Logan Brown, who's the 8th best tackle. Cable, who's the 6th best offensive tackle per Pro Football Focus. Bryce Foster's been 1 or 2 at center the whole year. Michael Ford Jr. has been 1 or 2 at left guard the whole year. That's pretty much the whole line. This is basically an offensive line that is developing players, is standalone in their uniqueness in the Big 12, and kind of just has some tanks that other teams just don't have right now.
No. And like, I think, there's a lot of carryover and good talent that was left over from, last year, but I feel like they've all gotten better. I really do. I feel like this offensive line is just taking big steps, with Coach Paulsa this year. And like, that was a big concern with Scott Fuchs leaving, a guy that's been, a big factor in this team's success when they first got here. But like, I think Coach Paulsa has done an incredible job developing this group. And, I think, like, there's obviously going to be some turnover. Kansas is going to lose some guys on the offensive line, this season, and we'll see how many that actually is. But you've got to feel good that there's a young group of players that's getting developed by this team right now. I had one other thought. Sorry, it was a play calling thought. I was thinking about this too. And this is just going back to some of the stuff that we've talked about, because I was remembered another play. And I think it was kind of a sign that like, this team's in their bag. This team's, hitting all cylinders when it comes from a play calling perspective. So they, I think they motioned out and they ran just like an edge screen early in the game. And they got Colorado the next time that they ran the same look, and normally the logical progression when you're talking about play calling is, hey, we're gonna pump to the edge screen that we just throw, and we're gonna, we got the stock blockers, and we're gonna run the verticals, right? It's your stutter and go, your block and go, right? They ran a middle screen to Jared Casey off of it. Oh yeah. They pumped the out route, or they pumped the out screen, and they showed like they're stocking and go, and then they just threw a middle screen to Jared Casey.
I like that one.
It was just like some of this creativity that they've employed is just it's impressive, and I'm blown away by a lot of this stuff lately. It's been really fun to watch, and it's well deserved. We all deserve watching this right now, and you hope they can continue it next week.
Yeah, you love it. You love the continuity. You love the consistency, and you love the creativity. You can also get that creativity at Home Field. All your gear, all the things you could ever want. They have over 150 colleges to choose from. Choose your favorite team, your favorite logo, your favorite design. It is all there for you. They bring the nostalgia back to college football apparel. You have got to check them out. Homefieldapparel.com. That's homefieldapparel.com. Use PayHeed24.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
So, welcome back to the show. One of the comments you said right before you added that play calling comment was talking about some of the player development, some of the coaching development, and something that I have been thinking a lot over the past couple of weeks is Leipold is starting to become very good at developing the things that he's very good at. We're in a 4-year period. This will be his first 4-year period, so it's early in the process. But man, you talked about it. Identifying coaches hasn't missed. Jonathan Wallace is up for the Broyles Award. He didn't even hire Jonathan Wallace. Jonathan Wallace has developed under him, under his leadership, and he's been excellent. He's had 2 different offensive line coaches, same offensive line results. This year, he's transitioning from a super popular coordinator who took a very high-profile job that was not easy to replace, especially the opening months of the season. He's checked that box. Thinking about some of the edge players he gets in the transfer portal, he hasn't missed yet. Gage Keys, more Austin Booker, a guy that barely played. And this year, again, Dylan Woodkey, who every time you need it, he arrives. So just talk about the reliability of what he's building and the ways you see the structure being fortified already.
Man, I heard I was talking to someone one time, and they were talking about we were talking about the trajectory in this program, and they just said, as long as Lance Leipold's leading this thing, I feel good about it, right? And it's like he maybe isn't necessarily the X's and O's guy, but he continues to identify and find and develop and set a standard for everyone in this in this organization. And I go back and I kind of point back to he'd talk about the process when this team was 1-6 and say, hey, we're close. Heard it so many times in some of these press conferences. And it's because there's just so much consistency to what this team does, and it's everything they do. There's a standard in this. It's so cliche, but the standard is the standard. And that is something that is walked out at Kansas. And that starts with the coaching staff. And I mean, he has a good pulse on what this team needs. He has a good pulse on what this program needs. And it's, DK McDonald too, throw him in, what I'm saying? He went and grabbed, I think, Peterson, last year.
Yeah. Lost him to A&M, another high profile.
Lost him to A&M, and you saw some stuff from last year to think maybe he was helping kind of modernize a little bit of what Brian Borland might have been doing, and hey, that's a big loss, big recruiter. The defense, look at what the defense is turning into the last half of the season. I know the offense is getting a ton of love too, but they've got a tremendous staff, and I think it's just Lance Leipold's consistency across the board, day in, day out, setting an expectation top to bottom, and you're finding, I think you're seeing the rewards of that, finding talented coaches. To your point, developing those coaches and setting high expectations that start with him and then bleed over to the rest of this program. It's just, he deserves a ton of credit for finding the right guys. And man, yeah, you're looking at the staff and just it's an impressive group, and they've gotten better and better every year. Jim Panagos, was kind of, he wasn't a super heralded hire necessarily, but even him, he's turned out tremendously. So this is just a great staff.
I am glad you brought up Panagos, man. That guy has been, excellent wouldn't properly describe watching Blake Harrell just blow stuff up and run down the line. This guy was a high school tight end coming off injury and is probably in his second year of life playing defensive tackle, starting on a Big 12 defense and playing really well, and has the athletic upside. That guy's young. Tommy Dunn Jr., he's coming back. DJ Withers is coming back. Mm-hmm. So what Panagos did was developed depth right away. And not just in the players he recruited, but the players he was developing. You look at a guy like Caleb Taylor, you think about Caleb Taylor, DJ Withers, Tommy Dunn Jr. You kind of clocked them as one thing when they got here, and now they are multiple things. Tommy Dunn can get up the field and rush the passer. He can also run down the line and make tackles. DJ Withers is a natural defensive tackle disruptor, but he makes plays in the run game, and Caleb Taylor is just an immovable object that gets guards up the field and knocks balls down. So he's made these guys learn new facets of their game, develop that trust, and man, you're seeing the fruits of the labor. Look at what they're doing at the edge position with Dean Miller. And let's talk about the defense, because the underrated part of it is that it feels like when Cornell Wheeler is on the field, the team can win the game. And I don't know. It's not really about his individual stats or the way he looks or anything. But when he's out there, they're one team, and when he's not, they're another.
Yeah, no, I think he's had a tremendous year, and I he's kind of one of those. He's honestly one of those stories to me too. When I think about Cornell Wheeler, that I think exemplifies what this program is really about. Because I think Cornell Wheeler came to Kansas Lance Leipold's first season at KU, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, from Michigan.
He's a 4-star guy, and he doesn't see the field much until last year. Really, I think this year that he gets out, and I think there was you're expecting. And I think maybe this is just the cycle of following Kansas football as long as we have, but it's like 4-star player from Michigan. I don't care if he's a freshman, he's probably getting out on the field. And if he's not getting on the field, it means he stinks, and I think that's like the cycle, you went through as a Kansas fan for 10, 15 years when they were bad and struggled to find talent. And Cornell Wheeler, like it was almost like a little bit dismissive of him, coming into last year. But you saw what he started to come on last year, look really good, and he's having an outstanding season. I think that's the best Mike backer that they've had in the Lance Leipold out there, and I know there's really only been two, essentially with Rich Miller and Cornell Wheeler, but I think football IQ is tremendous. I actually think football talent is, I think, a little bit underrated too.
Yeah.
I think he's got a chance to get some opportunities here at the next level. I'm not saying, we'll see what that eventually looks like, but high IQ player, good effort, good energy, and a pretty good athlete. I think he's a guy that, is going to see some opportunities here, next year when he's going to the NFL draft. But like, he's the glue guy he's the glue that connects front. You see him communicating all the time and communicating fronts and kind of doing what Rich Miller did, for this team.
Yeah.
But I think doing it in a body that's more capable of doing more on the football field than what Rich did. No disrespect to Rich Miller, but I mean, Cornell Wheeler's, I think he's had an incredible senior season.
Absolutely. And that's the part about being a Kansas football fan, that from week 1 to this week, we have to realize, like Kent just so elegantly put, that some of our understanding of Kansas football is being rewritten, just like the record books. And I know that there was a lot early in the season about jumping ship and, this isn't going to work and transitioning this jam. There's going to be nobody at the stadium and blah, blah, blah. And the team finds another way to continue to make history. And what I think people need to keep in mind is, I can't speak for everyone else. And I know our fans, they're fans, they get into it and they're active and they're emotional and they should be. But when I look at Kansas basketball, there's nothing I could think of that Bill Self hasn't already thought of. And not only has he not thought of it, he already has a solution. That's what Coach Leipold is. Coach Leipold has thought about everything you've thought about times a gazillion. And not only has he thought about it, he's put actions together to make it work. And like you said, there used to be an understanding that Cornell Wheeler's from Michigan. He's a 4-star and he's not playing. Must have came here because he stunk. No, he came here to play. And now you're seeing the fruits of that talent and that development and that level of trust. So our minds are telling us that this is the way it's always been here at Kansas. And I'm telling you that it's going to be different with Lance Leipold as long as Lance Leipold is here, because his ability to develop players, communicate, and kind of be just, I don't know how to describe, so stubborn about the goal of improving every day.
Yes.
It's boring to people, that it's like, oh yeah, we're going to get 1% better, or this is the same thing I said last week. It's the same thing he said last week. You know what I mean? I'm in there. It's the same thing he said last week. And that's what makes this thing move the way it does. So that's what you're going to continue to see. So I ask you to just be patient and enjoy it, because this guy's going to figure it out. And talk about figuring out, going from wanting to be the first team to make the playoffs and wanting that glory and wanting that for yourselves, but not giving up when you failed, and then becoming a team to do something that's never been done in consecutive weeks, beating ranked teams with a losing record. Just a testament to all of that build up and development. But let's talk about the next level and how those players projected and looked in a game with a lot of eyes. I think they said the ratings were at 6 million. Tell me about Kobe helping himself, Tell me about tell me about Devin Neal helping himself and being on the lips of every national broadcaster in America. Just tell me what kind of impact this can have, because that's what you are working, you do this work. So tell me what kind of impact that can have for some of these guys' careers.
Yeah, so in full statement, I'd try to be harder on Kansas football players from a draft perspective because I'm a little closer to the fire and I watch a lot of these guys, and there's a level of emotion. So I've tried to temper expectations, but also at the same time, like I kind of I had a pretty good idea about, like, I thought Pooney would be a top 100 guy, wound up being a top 100 guy. I thought Booker would probably be a day 3 guy, wound up being a day 3 guy. And if he tests better, maybe he sneaks into day 3 or day 2. I've tried to set expectations, being pretty realistic with some of these guys as best as I can. I think, man, Kobe Bryant, I've probably been the hardest. I've often said, like, I think from a draftable perspective, I think Melo Dotson's the more draftable player than a Kobe Bryant. But man, watching Kobe Bryant take on that block out on the edge and make that play in the flat. I think it was against Travis Hunter too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And seeing some of the stuff that he's done, like, there's been concern for me about play strength and stuff like that. But for the next level, like, yeah, he's helped himself tremendously this year. And I think he's got an opportunity to hear his name higher than I might have thought, in previous years. And I'll talk about, like, talking about Devin. I'm way too low on Devin. And, like, I've been pretty hard on Devin because, like, man, that dude is, it's hard. It's, you try to put the fan hat at the door when you're doing some of this stuff. And so, like,
it's hard with him though.
It's really hard with him. Yeah. But I think, in the right scheme, he can be a lead back in the National Football League. He's got incredible patience. I mean, watching, I put him in some kind of, put him in some kind of, zone scheme. Let him, make those decisions. Let him read things out. He's got incredible vision. His ability to make guys miss has really stood out to me. And, like, I've questioned the overall athletic profile from a running back perspective, as far as, like, he's not like, he's not an Ashton Genty level athlete, right? But not very many guys are. But he's got more than enough to be a guy that can do everything we're seeing in college at a high level. And
Absolutely.
And some of the stuff in the passing game, like, I'm still, like, I still think, it's tricky, but, like, I don't know how much it matters right now. Teams, he doesn't need, if he's not running a ton of routes, it doesn't matter right now. If you look how the National Football League is being played, we probably even talked about this a little bit the last time we were together, but I think he's a guy that, he's helped himself tremendously. And I think he's going to go in the top 100 picks, where I might have been a little bit, that line, pick 100 would have been a good line. I think, pick 70 is a good line now. You could see him sneak into the second round or the early third now at this point. I think he's helped himself out tremendously. So he's having a great season. And, man, I'm curious to see where he winds up at the next level too. One more game. No, 2 more games. Let's get 2 more days in before all that.
Yeah, so I'm with you on Kobe. I think Kobe's had a great year. I think some of the things that he has been near, as a DB, you get credit when you make the play, and you get credit sometimes just because you're close. And I think a lot of times he's taken some heat for some situations he was kind of helping on more than he was being beat. I think he's gotten a little handsy and impatient when the ball's in the air sometimes. I think he should be making more plays on the ball, less plays on the man. But, like, that's like a minimal gripe, about a player that there are some questions about his weight. I think he's answered the questions about his strength. I think he's used his length very well to top of routes. When you see these guys that get to the top of the routes and bulldog you, Kobe has not struggled with that as much as I thought he might. He's been very good at that. And I think it has a lot to do with his length. He's able to wrap guys without turning him to keep him close. And he's just slithery around the football. I'll also say over the last 2 years, his tackling has been excellent. Like, he's just not a guy that misses a ton of tackles. If you remember early in his career, he would always get injured, and he'd have to limp off. And that was just 2 years ago, where every time he got a hit, you'd worry if he was injured. He's answered all of those questions. He's playing special teams, covering punts this year. I think he's developed into a really good all-around player, and you're starting to see some national pundits put him in the 50s and 60s in terms of where they're rating players, and I think it's deserved. And when in a league where wide receiver play is getting better and better and better, there's always going to be a place for Kobe Bryant's and Melo Dotson's, guys with length, guys that can play the football, guys with tons of experience, guys that tackle well. I expect both guys to be drafted. I don't see one reason why they wouldn't be. Just two awesome players, and these kind of moments helped. Devin, so I had mentioned this many times, and I will mention it every time. His ability to make people miss in the hole has reached a whole different level. It's reached the level I've only seen with big-time pros, guys like Breece Hall, guys like Bijan Robinson. It's at the point, it's a layup. It's a layup, bro. Like that play where they had holding and Dion declined it and put him in 2nd and 13. It was a perfect run blitz. They had the linebacker in the hole. They had the safety in the hole. He froze the front side linebacker, juked the backside linebacker, ran away from the play side safety and got 17 yards, 23 yards, and they got another 15 on the horse collar. That was a joke. That was a joke. Like that's what pros do. So there is no question about that. I thought that this was I wouldn't say the first game because he's been better about power. I thought coming into the year, his size and power, his size to how he played with power was not lining up to me. I just thought that he wasn't finishing runs in the way that his body style would suggest because he's a dense 6 foot, 215. He's a big, strong guy. So this year, though, this past game, that touchdown on 3rd down where they had ran it down their throats, Highsaw's not available. Hold on, let's give a Sevion shout out right quick. What a good player. Good downhill slashing runner that's big and fast. I can't wait for him to have to carry a bigger load next year because that dude is good. I mean, every time he touches the ball, he's good. Just give me a quick Sevy comment, then I'll finish my Devin diatribe.
Yeah, he's surprised me a little bit last couple of weeks, just getting an opportunity. Like you think about like the 3rd and 7 against K-State a couple of weeks ago, and you see that play, and you saw some of the stuff he did in this game. Yeah, I've been very, very impressed with him. I think there were some ball security issues. If I remember when he first got here, right? And he's done, seeing him take those steps, protect the football, and being put in some high leverage situations the last few weeks. Like that's been huge for him and his development, his growth. He's stuck around. He's I did get a chance to meet him one time, super straight kid, and he's a guy you want to root for. So he's coming together really nicely as a player. I'm very impressed with what he's become, and it sounds like you've got at least one more year. You got one more year running back with him, and you should be getting a feature role for this team next year.
Yeah, this guy's a stud. And as I finish this Devin Neal comment, his pass pro has improved incredibly. Just because, Highsaw's been injured and unavailable and they've had to count on him in big moments and he's delivered. The guy's been great at pass pro, but the physicality on these drives at the end of this game, when he hit, that number 7 in the hole on that 3rd and goal, and you could hear the physical energy deflate out of the Colorado Buffaloes. Boom. And you could hear the announcer go, oh, that version of Devin Neal didn't exist last year. If he's going to run with power and that type of elusiveness, I mean, he not only could be a starter, could be a feature back that we're hearing from many times, especially the way the game is changing. He is the kind of guy you want. You want a guy that's big and physical enough to pound away that can also make people miss and be a screen guy and do some gadget stuff. I think he is perfectly timed for where the NFL is going to counteract these two safety defenses and running the ball with better structure. I think the roles are more defined, and I think you'll see teams a little more comfortable drafting earlier. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy that really fits that profile. You could have seen him going in the 2nd round. You could have talked yourself out of him 100 different ways, or you could talk yourself into him, and you could end up with, you put Saquon in a system where the offensive line's good and he's an MVP candidate. Derrick Henry looked finished. You put him in a system, he's an MVP candidate. Kareem Hunt comes off the street and is rushing for 100 yards a game. So I think there is just a different kind of structure that I think Devin could benefit from that complements his growth as a player and where the NFL is going. So I like the fit for him. So let's talk some Baylor. Baylor is a team that came in super hot. They're winners of 5 straight. I think after their 3rd game in a row, they were averaging 44 points a game. We're number 1 in the country. They have since cooled off. Houston, they beat Houston 20-10. Houston is very bad at the offensive line level, and Baylor is very good at the defensive line level. So it was a game that you could expect the outcome. This Baylor team is very good. And not only that, they're actually a better matchup than the last 3 teams that have faced Kansas for one simple reason that we mentioned earlier. Not an odd front team and very big in the defensive line. They are not going to get pushed around there. So talk about what you've seen from Baylor in this matchup with Kansas.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be a tough one, and like I know it's like you see the ranked opponents and all that stuff, but like this is a different challenge, like you said, BMAC. This is a unique challenge, and it plays to some things, that the KU has had a lot more success with this year, but like offensively, they're gonna play with a lot of tempo. They have some size and physicality on both sides of the ball up front. They played with a lot of tempo, but they ran the ball 49 times last week against Houston, right? So this is going to be it's a big boy pants type of game, and coming off a game where where Kansas was just out physicaling Colorado and physically dominating them and playing just a beautiful version of football where they were controlling the clock and they were out snapping them once on offense, 2.5-1, and just breaking the will of Colorado. I don't know if that's going to be the same. You're hoping that you can get some quick 3 and outs, but it's going to be a lot of physicality, and it's going to be handling tempo, from the offensive side of the ball. So those are 2 big challenges for Kansas, and Kansas is, there's been some of their worst games defensively in the last few seasons have been against tempo. I think they've been a lot better this year with it, but it's definitely going to be a challenge for them for a lot of reasons. And Dave Aranda's gotten that team playing a lot better football the second half of the season, the same way Kansas has.
Yeah, they are a team on the rise, and I don't want to overstate their defense because I don't think they're as good defensively as the last 3 teams. I just think the matchup is different. I think this matchup is going to require more execution and less of that lean. They'll be able to lean on and run at this team physically. Baylor as a run defense is more similar to our run defense. So they do give up stuff in the run. They do give up stuff in the pass game and over the top. So it's not like they're just this excellent defense, a good defense, but bigger and physical. And I do think it's a game that Kansas can win. It is a game where the quarterback and wide receiver combination has got to matriculate a little bit better than it has the past couple of weeks. It seems like outside of some major plays from Quentin Skinner and Luke Grimm's consistency, the tight end play is upticked. There's been some more production out of the tight end play. Wide receiver connection's been a little shaky outside of the top 2. I think Baylor will give them some opportunities. But what are you looking for early in the game to see JD and that wide receiving core get back into some rhythm?
Well, and that's a good point. Like, I think they've needed more creativity to get the passing game going, right? It hasn't been, necessarily all their true drop back game, especially against Colorado. Like, it was more just, some of the creativity to try to find ways to, get some things going in the passing game. So, that's definitely something that they're going to have to pay attention to. I've liked getting the tight ends involved more as the season has gone on, and I think that's been a big factor in how this team has been able to find success. Like, I think that's going to be important in this game too. For JD to keep involving those guys. I do think Baylor will do everything they can to try to slow down Devin Neal in the run game, knowing that they can't do what just happened. They can't give up what just happened to Colorado. So that should bleed into giving them some opportunities in the vertical passing game. You talk about Quentin Skinner. He's a high variance player, as you saw against Kansas State. If Quentin Skinner wants to keep playing, some games with his friends here at KU, with his teammates and his brothers, he's going to have a big performance down the field. They're going to have to hit an explosive play in the passing game. They're going to have that shot that Quentin Skinner, he's going to have to come down with it, right?
Yeah.
I know Lawrence Arnold's been dealing with some injuries there, but he's a guy, he's your guy that can, win outside, and you got to hit him on a dig or 2 here in this game. You've got to hit an outside throw. If you're gonna beat Baylor, you need that passing game to get going. And I do. I really think, hey, look, we've talked about like this creativity and this team really building this great rhythm in the play calling. And obviously the run game's been so big for them being able to do that. But I don't think they're done. I think they got more. I think they got more here. And I feel confident that they're going to have enough to go out there and take care of business against Baylor. And I think, that these seniors are going to have a great performance in this game. And I don't think they're done playing together. So I hope we get that.
And in fairness to the passing game, Colorado is one of the best passing defenses because of how good their corners are.
Hunter's all right. He's okay.
Particularly number 12. I do want to spend 1 second on Travis. I mean, he's a consensus. We don't need to break him down at all. But that over route to Luke Grimm that he nearly intercepted was an absurd play. And I will tell you why it's absurd is because people with bones usually aren't able to change body angles and accelerate. There was no reason for that. On the broadcast, they said there was a comment about maybe if he'd have put it further out. I'm like, if he'd have put it further out, he would have just went further out. Like he was going to go wherever that ball was. That shocked me. Now, watching him run on offense is a joke because of how light he is on his feet. He's more comparable to I play in that all-star game with the former KU basketball players, and Tyson Taylor moves like a pixie. Like you can't feel his force even when you're watching it. So sometimes he'll go up and elevate and you won't hear his feet. Like his feet are that quiet. That's what Travis Hunter looks like on a football field. He's able to bend in ways that other people don't, and he's able to change directions in ways that play itself, I just don't I'm not used to seeing people be upright and then be laid out in an instant. It was incredible. It was one of the more incredible things I've ever seen on a football field.
And I mean, Luke Grimm ran a pretty good route on that too.
Yeah.
It's just that Travis Hunter, like he actually got him off the top of at the top of the route. I think that Luke actually broke a nice little, crosser off the top, and like he got a step briefly on Hunter, and that dude. I mean, the throw wasn't great. It wasn't bad, and that throw against normal cornerbacks is not touched by the cornerback. No. It's insane. I put my hands above my head on that because it was stunning. Like that's what makes him what he is just one of the rarest athletes on the planet, and still a very good football player and a continually ascending football player. Unbelievable. Like just him extending out there and being able to do that was just absolutely absurd. And like it was fun. It was fun to watch. It was fun to watch him play, and I don't think KU necessarily limited him, but other teams have gotten him, he's gotten other teams worse than he got KU in that game.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you mentioned the JD thing though, because that was almost a great throw. I mean, that was about wherever you could put it to where it wouldn't be picked, and he still got down there, it was gross. I actually don't want to talk about it anymore. But I did want to talk about Travis Hunter for 1 second, because I do think that a development as the offense has grown has been Quentin Skinner in man coverage. I think he's just won more over the last 4 weeks than he did early in the year, specifically Iowa State, specifically BYU. And honestly, on that goal line possession against Travis Hunter, he got some separation. That was a little wide on the throw, and you understand why. But I mean, I think Q has done well in winning man coverage because we know what he's good at, as a long ball guy. But winning against man has not been something he's been great at, except over the past 4 weeks. So just talk about Q and his development.
He's definitely gotten better and better as his career has gone on. And I had some, I understand why this team, like some of the stuff the team that KU would try to do with him, where like some of the edge screens and giving him the ball in some of those situations, that's not necessarily something like I'm a big fan of, because I think he's a guy that needs build up, needs time to, you don't really want him starting and stopping his feet too much. That's at least kind of been my perception, but I think he's been a lot better with his footwork at the top of routes too. And I think that's something that's really been big for him. And as he's grown and developed, seeing him kind of figure out that a little bit more, making some sharper breaks in some of these routes. He's looked a lot better. There's no he's taking some steps. I think he's a little too much of a body catcher still. And that's definitely something that he needs to grow. That's another step that he's going to have to take if he wants to get opportunities at the next level. I think he's inconsistent in when he picks, if he's going to catch with his body, if he's going to catch with his hands, he's going to, catch under a ball, if he's going to, but man, yeah, he's taken some big strides as the season's gone on, and it's good I'm happy for him. He's a guy that stuck it out here at KU. So,
Former
I'm happy
walk-on
for him.
who's been a good player. And I think he's a guy that, because of his raw traits, is going to get lots of looks to play at the next level. So if he can just continue to develop and keep his head down, I think he'll be a guy we hear from at some point, just because 6'5", 4'4" guys don't grow on trees. And he is a big man that can run fast. So I expect him to be around. So hopefully he continues to work on that stuff.
I'll give you a comp right now. I'm still working on Marquez Valdez-Scantling vibes. So that's something I kind of seen him right now.
Yeah, one trick pony. And it's a good trick.
It's not just that. Like, I mean, MVS has a little bit more to him, and like all of these guys have a little bit more to them. It's just like, what's the trait you're gonna be known for at the next level? And like, I think that's where, Quentin's still got something. I think that's gonna be a hallmark for him, is being big and fast and down the field. But like, he's done enough to where MVS has done enough to be integrated a little bit in that. So
yeah. So one last comment on NFL guy, a name that I'm hearing recently is Logan Brown. Logan's obviously having a good season. Pro Football Focus has him rated high. I love his physicality at the point of attack. He's been a victim of some questionable holding calls, to say the least. But, that affects evaluation. But a guy that's having a really good year with blue chip pedigree. What are you hearing about him?
Man, terrible player. He should definitely stay at Kansas another year. And
great evaluation.
Yeah, he's having a fantastic season. And like, I think you're starting to see, like you talk about, the pedigree is showing up now. Where like, maybe when he first got here, maybe not as consistent, but man, he's better and better and better and better. And just watching his development, he looks a lot more comfortable and confident in this blocking scheme. I think his pass protection has been very good, which is, I think the biggest stride for him, right? And then I watched some of the tape from him, at Wisconsin. I think he's worked his body differently here than when he was at Wisconsin too. Like, he looks a little bit differently physically. He looks lighter on his feet. So he's taken tremendous steps, and I've been very impressed with what he's put on. I know he's been dealing with some injuries and some of that kind of stuff, but this team, like, that's the thing. Like, this team has identified and developed offensive line talent so well. Yeah, I'm so impressed with this group and what this team has done. Like, that's such a huge factor in their continued success. And Logan Brown's just another one of those guys that he got better at Kansas. He was at Wisconsin and he got better at Kansas, and that's undeniable. And he's getting his name. I'm hearing his name as a guy that deserves some consideration for the next level. He's definitely going to have a decision to make here very quickly.
Yeah, that guy could play some football. Cable Dude's had a great year. Cable Dude will just hop over and play right tackle when somebody's down, and hop over and play left tackle when you need him. I think I've just been impressed with how the Big 12 is known for pass rush and giving up sacks, and it's basically only affected one game. There was so much pressure in that West Virginia game. Basically, West Virginia was a game where I thought they didn't play at their best.
It was still up 11.
And that's still up 11. It was 11. But other than that game, I can't even really think of games where guys are getting pressure with 4. I mean, it basically hasn't happened. It just has not happened. They've been incredible. They've been incredibly coached.
Yeah.
The execution's been great. And like you said, you see that sack rate every year. It is low. They're basically top 10, 15 every year in that statistic. And it isn't because they're throwing quick game. It's because they can block it. They can teach it. They can protect it. What a great team. What a great show. What a great run for the Booth Review. I know we'll be back again because we're going to get a win against Baylor, and it'll be bowl season time again on the Booth Review. We can talk about the youngsters and all the great things. Ken, thanks for joining us, man. Rock, chalk it up, as Bob Haney would say. Appreciate
Happy
you,
to
bro.
be here, man. Yep.
Yes, sir.